Salutations, populace! It's appreciated to procure your engagement with Jennifer's micro-intersection. The English language is a fascinating thing. When I introduced this show just now, you all understood the words and their meaning. But I'm guessing most of you are thinking, what on earth is she on about? Populace engagement with micro-intersection? Huh? And of course, you would be right. It's much easier to say, hi everyone and welcome to Jen's Little Corner. But the other interaction is still perfectly valid. In English, we have words with similar meanings, synonyms, which can be arranged in such a way as to convey the same meanings with vastly different sentences. For example, she sells seashells by the seashore could be written as, her entrepreneurial retail skills are predominantly displayed at a coastal location. But of course, this was not a good tongue twist to make. So why don't we talk like this all the time? Well, because aside from science, medicine, and lawyers, most of us will simplify our language down when communicating. In fact, this act of simplifying language seems to be a natural phenomenon of language itself. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, there are approximately 170,000 words in the English language, with many more slang words in use that do not appear in the dictionary. If we ignore the agglutinative languages, such as Finnish and Japanese, languages in which words get stuck together in long strips of indefinite length, and which therefore have an almost infinite number of words, we can think of English as one of the most wordy languages on the planet. However, studies have shown that the average adult uses only about 3,000 words on a regular basis, and even less, perhaps as low as 1,000 words, on a daily basis. Is it any wonder then that "Hi everyone" is preferable to most people compared to "Salutations, populace"? As we complicate our language, we make our audience work harder to understand our meaning, and this can bring about an impression to our listeners that we are being aloof and trying to one-up them. No one likes to feel stupid, so when someone, say like a lawyer, goes out of their way to use language that makes us feel alienated from the conversation, we tend to look at that person not so much in awe, but with a level of contempt. Our general approach, though, when presenting something that needs to be more complicated, is to dumb it down, to take the words used and replace them with ones that are easier to follow, to understand. Which is fine when we can dumb it down. But when we can't, like for example when we are talking about science, this causes a whole raft of problems of its own. Science has a whole lot of words and meanings that are particular to it. Let's take a look, for example, at the word theory. In science, the word theory refers to a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world. Theories are based off a body of facts and laws, and have been repeatedly confirmed through experimentation and observation. They need to be able to make predictions that can be proved wrong as infalsifiable. Theory in science is the highest level an idea can obtain. But this isn't the only meaning of the word theory in our everyday lexicon. Theory has come to be a synonym for guess or hunch, with this variance in meaning often being a source of head-banging and face palms when talking with less educated, like young earth creationists and flat earthers. Yet we have to ask ourselves, are they wrong to assume that a theory is a guess, when within our common vernacular it is exactly what is meant by theory? In this case, I would strongly argue that if you are the person using the less common meaning, it is up to you to define your meaning for your audience. We should not assume that our audience understands our meaning, but rather educate them to our meaning. So if you want to talk about a scientific theory, you would be better representing your position by using the words scientific theory, because then there can be no misunderstanding of your meaning. Well, no honest misunderstanding of your meaning anyway. Similar thing happens within biology with the term sex. In colloquial terms, sex is, when talking about humans, the same as gender. We take our sex cues from people from their phenotypical clues they present, i.e. body shapes, mannerisms, voice, etc. These are the same cues that are used to describe gender, and for most people, when they say gender or sex, they mean the same thing. However, in science, sex has a different meaning, and it is derived from the gamete, i.e. egg or sperm, produced by the subject. This is what we call biological sex, and is useful in describing populations and reproduction, but has less use in describing individuals. But what term is best at describing humans? Our colloquial sex, more based on phenotype, or the biological one, based on gametes? Well, it may surprise you to know that each of us is classified at birth by our phenotypical sex. That is, the doctor just takes a gander between our legs. And they don't actually use our biological sex, although for most people these two usually correlate, but that is not always the case. So like with scientific theory and its colloquial use, we should make sure that the terms we are wanting to use are the ones we are actually getting across to our listeners. If you want to talk about biological sex, then say biological sex. But also, be aware that if your use of biological sex wasn't pertinent to the discussion, then perhaps you should have chosen your words more carefully. In 1839, English playwright Edward Bulwer Lytton penned the phrase, "The pen is mightier than the sword," in his play Rucellai. Beneath the rule of men entirely great, the pen is mightier than the sword. Behold, the arch enchanter's wand itself is nothing, but taking sorcery from the master hand to paralyze the Caesars and to strike the loud earth breathless. Take away the sword, states can be saved without it. Bulwer Lytton here is describing how powerful words can be in the right hands. That the right words at the right time can bring down governments, end wars, and move people to silence. I would also contend, though, that the wrong use of words in careless or malicious hands can cause as much damage as good. When we take words and use their incorrect meanings to misrepresent someone or something, we can cause a great deal of harm to an individual or group. Look how young Earth creationists like Ken Ham use their misrepresentation of the word theory to sell a narrative of theory of evolution only being a guess. This enables them to attack science in a dishonest way that easily confuses their less educated congregations. Likewise, when we insist upon the biological meanings of words like sex and male and female in everyday conversation, all we are doing is alienating an already marginalized group of people in society, that is, intersex and trans people. There are very few times in normal conversation that these biological terms are pertinent, yet many right-wingers and radicals will insist on them for the sole purpose of attacking these minorities. So, where does this leave us? English is a complicated language, and if we are going to use it to communicate ideas successfully, openly, and with as little negative effects as possible, we need to make sure that when we speak, the people we are talking to understand our meaning, and that we understand why we choose the meanings we did. After all, a scientific theory isn't a layman's theory, and biological sex isn't always the same as the one on your birth certificate. Anyway, let me know what you think down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And recollect, prevention of asphyxiation is preferable while rehearsing oral stimulation.